So I was watching Puss in Boots: The Last Wish for the 9th time, and then it hit me. This is a spin-off, right? Not only that, but it's also a sequel, right? You following? Then I realized that I hadn't seen the first movie in years. I remember liking it as a kid, but truth be told, I haven't actually revisited it in a very long time. And I need a quick little video to get through before I jump right into some of the biggest videos I'll ever make in my life. So how about I take a bit of a sneaky trip down memory lane and watch Puss in Boots 2011. Puss in Boots is alright. This appears as a really interesting movie to talk about, but I'll be honest, it's really hard to come up with stuff to say. I probably will be able to in the end, and this video will probably be like 10 to 15 minutes in length or whatever, but as of right now that I've just started writing the script, I can't really think of anything big because, dare I say it, Puss in Boots, the first one, is aggressively fine. And trust me when I say that this word will be used quite frequently throughout the duration of this informal video essay analysis, mostly because this word is really the only way that I can describe this movie. Now that we got that out of the way, this movie is fine. So much of these parts of the movie is just fine. There isn't really anything that I love or even just really like here, but that is balanced out with how there isn't really anything bad here either. It just ranges from mid to pretty good occasionally. I can't believe that I am about to do this to myself. You know what, let's just start off with what I find mediocre about Puss in Boots, because I need to state some real opinions, even if they aren't necessarily positive. So for starters, this is a surprisingly unfunny movie. I didn't really laugh out even once, which is kind of disappointing to be honest. I chuckled a few times and there was the occasional somewhat funny moment, but in total, I just find myself feeling cheated by the fact that the comedy wasn't all that great. The movie tries to be funny a lot of the time, and they never really fall completely flat. Nothing from the comedy was outrageously annoying or awful. It's not Shrek the Third, but almost every time that this movie attempts a joke, it just screamed whatever. And then there's the total disregard of one of the key elements from the Shrek franchise. You know how these films like to poke fun at classic Disney fairy tales? You know how Shrek goes out of its way to pull the middle finger at Disney? This movie doesn't do that. This wouldn't have been as much of a problem if it wasn't for Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which actually goes out of its way to poke fun at Disney. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a problem to be honest. Not a big one, obviously. I just find it just so mid. Speaking of which, Jack and Jill as the leading villains of the movie does sound like a good idea, but I just have so many problems with them. First of all being that they don't get nearly enough screen time to flush them out enough. Second of all being that I just don't really enjoy looking at them, man. The character design makes sense, but it comes off weird, and their obsession with pigs is a mixture between the funniest thing ever and just weird. In fact, the human designs look mid as ever and pale in comparison with the human designs in The Last Wish. The pacing drags sometimes, which gets annoying. There's the occasional character which gets kind of annoying, and that's just about all the overly whatever things about this movie. Now for the real treat. Here is my take on the fine stuff, or in other words, and more accurate words, pretty much everything else. For starters, the story itself just feels so neutral to me. It seems like they definitely are trying to craft this enjoyable and thrilling adventure, but the journey is just fine. They do things along the way which are fine, they have obstacles which are fine, and the entire purpose of this journey is pretty fine. There's the odd scene which I kinda like, but we've just seen this exact story be shown in film format before, and has been done better in film format before. The whole point of the adventure is that Puss, Humpty, and Kitty have got to team up to beat Jack and Jill to this golden goose. Literally. It's just not got enough originality to it, and this works better in Puss 2 because even though it's a similar premise, the journey and chaotic race to get the last wish is able to flush out each and every contender, whereas here, there's just not enough. The animation's alright. I was planning on complimenting the movie on its use of background design and cool artsy colors, yet the character designs are all just fine. I don't really like the human designs as said before, but as well as that, Puss, Kitty, and Humpty's looks just aren't special in any way. Overall, the animation here is for the most part just pretty standard, and now it's insulting when looking at what comes out of The Last Wish. The lessons learned by the characters do have their somewhat strong elements, which I will get into very soon, but we have also seen this a lot of other times. The chemistry between all the characters is fine for what it's worth, the structuring of the movie is fine, the directing is fine, the writing is fine, this movie is fine, and I cannot stress that enough. Almost every scene is fine, the overall pacing is pretty much fine, the settings are fine, the cinematography is pretty good actually, the stakes are fine, the milk drinking is fine, the pigs are fine, that one tiny insignificant hair on Jack's beard and amongst all the other tiny insignificant hairs on his beard is fine. It's fine. So here's what I like about the movie, because I really need to say something positive or else I am going to lose my mind. One of the few things that I can actually say are good about this movie is the conclusion to Puss and Humpty's relationship. I felt like the movie really took its sweet time in getting us even just slightly invested in the somewhat brotherly bond between the two, only for it to be revealed that Humpty was just playing Puss the entire time. And then in the climax, they rejoin together again in a natural way. I like that conversation that they have when Puss convinces Humpty to save San Ricardo, and then the climax itself is fun too, as with Puss and the egg teaming up to give the mother goose back her baby. Humpty's arc feels, dare I say it, pretty decent? Yeah, I know. And god, that last moment between the two was actually really good. It felt earned, and ultimately, I was satisfied with the way that the movie brought Puss and Humpty's relationship to a close. Easily the best moment in the movie, and honestly my favorite aspect of the movie in general. Then there's the plot twist regarding Humpty, as I mentioned earlier. I'll be straight, I really didn't see this reveal coming as a kid. Like, it felt like the most insanely well-made twist in any movie. Obviously, I don't see that now, but I still think that they played their twist villain card pretty well, even to this day. I've always actually found Humpty a pretty interesting character, memes and all jokes aside, and I liked what they chose to do with him. And I mean, he's still like the beta version of 2's villain squad, and most of the Shrek villains, but you know what? I'm glad about the egg being a thing. The voice acting is pretty good, and a decent few of his jokes actually kinda somewhat land for me. And how about we talk about that twist reveal for a brief sec? I like it, man. They kinda threaded it through to us about what lies beneath the surface of this character, and the subtle hints were, well, subtle. I have some mixed feelings about the actual reveal scene and how the egg claims that he had always been there. Like, on the one hand, it's a really funny moment, but on the other hand, I just don't buy any of it, man. I mean, come on, this stuff is weak. He clearly wasn't always there, and that just bugs me. Look at Death, he was literally always there. He was in that crowd when Puss was, swinging through the whatchamacallit and fighting the big tree. Who cares, it's funny though. Either or, however, I liked the way that they showed that Humpty's true intentions were to trick Puss and have Kitty in on it too, but then make the honourable choice to stop his evil plans even after his twist villain reveal. And once again, very nice conclusion to Puss and Humpty's relationship. Wouldn't have wanted anything more. As for the morals, it's mostly fine. But I did actually like the way that this movie tries to include the message of trust. So Puss and Humpty have known each other all their lives, right? They broke bread, they danced, and they enigmatically gazed upon the starry night sky while reciting each other's hopes and dreams. But above all, they wanted beans. But then, as they grow up, this obsession with finding these beans begins to degrade, and the two of them just start to cause mischief and advanced criminal activity. And after slowly growing apart, Puss gets suddenly tricked by Humpty into robbing a bank, which is pretty messed up. Humpty gets caught, and Puss falls off a bridge with the entire town of San Ricardo thinking that he was just as guilty as the egg. Since Humpty essentially framed Puss, the entire town is against him, and he is now an outlaw, wanted in jail. Then, when Humpty wants Puss's help to steal the beans, to steal the golden goose, Puss obviously fight against it. I mean, he just got played by an egg, why wouldn't he feel annoyed about his life? Eventually, Eventually, after some consideration though, Puss reluctantly decides to help out, only to slowly let his guard around Humpty down. However, it's later revealed that the egg was just playing Puss yet again, and Kitty was in on it sort of too, you know, and yet Puss still deep down trusts Humpty, and Humpty deep down still has remorse for Puss. So because of that, Puss encourages the egg to be a better egg, which leads to the egg sacrificing himself so that Sam Ricardo doesn't get destroyed by a goose. It's actually good stuff. As for the smaller stuff that I enjoyed, I mean, Puss is kinda cool, and I like the angle that the movie presents him with regarding trust, and he's just pretty fun overall. Kitty's pretty good as well. The theme score for this movie slaps, like who knew? It captures the awesomeness of the movie's western adventure style really well, and is all in all just a banger tune. I always like that flashback showing the origins of Puss and Humpty's brotherhood and eventual breakup. I don't know why, it's just well done to me. There's the odd moment that I like, such as Puss's first scene in the bar at the beginning, and especially that moment where Puss apologizes to his foster mother at the end, which I thought was also well done. The characters are pretty well developed, and yeah, I mean, there's some decent stuff here. And whilst I do feel like there's only a couple of parts which I thought were really good, the movie serves as a perfectly fine spin-off to the Shrek films. But I'll be honest, a few months back, we got something out of the blue that I and pretty much everyone else on this planet believes was infinitely better. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is unfortunately better than this movie in every way imaginable. It has better animation, better characters, better themes, better villains, better stakes, a sequel that is not only better than the original but better in every way is pretty rare, and as glad as I am that 2 is as amazing as it is, it makes the first film look kind of fake in comparison. Everything of value here is mostly swept away now by its successor, and I doubt many people are going to see this as the go-to Puss in Boots spin-off movie anymore. Who knows though? It'll be interesting to see how all this pans out in the end. I really hope it doesn't die off, even though I like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish much more and feel so much more strongly about it. That is a brilliantly solid 9 out of 10, while this is stuck at a fine, okay, sometimes decent, sometimes mid 6 out of 10. The lesson learned here is to never trust your baby self, as they are stupid and have absolutely no concept of the quality of a film. It's fine, and let's just leave it at that. See you later.